Step back, puts up the three, got hit, shot's good, and one! James Harden double team, and a chance for a 4-point play.
Okay, welcome back to the DC pod. I am Christian, a depressed individual at the moment as we're recording just after half an hour of the final buzzer going for Atlanta Philly Game 7. By the time this comes out, you'll obviously know the result. But as always, I'm joined by Dallas diehard Darcy. We will cover all things basketball. And look, I'll let you go first, Darcy. But how I guess as a neutral, did you feel about watching that Game 7 that just went down?
I felt pretty bad as an Australian and a fan of Benny Simmons. I thought he was probably the most disappointing player on the court in this big Game 7, which is a tough one to swallow. And when that buzzer goes out, you just think about all the things that happened during the series and how Philly had their chances again and again to win it. But I suppose you got to give a lot of credit to Atlanta, and it was a nice surprise to see them, really play at a high level and get the win. I thought Gallinari again was exceptional and definitely the player of the game. The guy who made the biggest difference, the guy who shone the most was Huerter, Kevin Huerter, the red mamba. He showed a complete offensive game. He showed that he was, between him and Seth Curry, I thought they looked like probably the most skilled offensive players out there. It doesn't mean that they're the best or the most dominant, but they showed the ability to get a shot off, basically from anywhere on the court at a critical moment. And Huerter was able to just be so efficient. And yeah, I think it's tough to look at, or think about the whole series in a whole when you're looking at so raw after that game. But specifically in the game, in the fourth quarter, was there any particular moment or two that stood out to you as basically the nail in the coffin for Philly?
Gosh, you can pick out a lot of things in that fourth. The backbreaker was probably at the end there where Matisse fouled Huerter on the three. That hurt. Tobias missed just a ton of bunnies, just some real momentum killers as we were making a comeback there. The obvious one, the photo that will be all over social media is the Simmons one, where he obviously has Gallo on his back and he spins around past him, and it's him in the basket. And the closest Atlanta Hawks defender is Trae Young, who's barely 6 foot, and Simmons is 6'10". And instead of Ben rising up for a dunk, a lay-in, anything, he throws it to Matisse, who then gets fouled. And that's are we down 2 at that stage? It was maybe 4 minutes to go in the fourth at that particular moment. So we're down 2 at that point. And that's the state of affairs. And that it just really, it's unbelievable that we're at this position with Simmons, given, what was it? 6 months ago, we were talking about Simmons and Maxey and a first for Harden. I get this, saying something like this would be very drastic and over the top, but the way I'm feeling right now is like, if Daryl was to offer Atlanta Simmons for Huerter straight up, do Atlanta say yes? Like, I don't even know if they say yes to that, which is just batshit insane to even think like that. But his trade value is ultimately at an all-time low, and it really doesn't help when I saw in the press conference after this game, Doc was asked if he thinks Simmons can be the leading point guard on a championship team. And Doc said, I can't answer that question right now. So it just goes to sort of show the belief in him is non-existent. His belief in himself, non-existent. And this is a guy that as well, I saw a video where he was on some live stream, obviously gaming, which is, again, another issue. Maybe work on your freaking basketball rather than freaking play video games in the off season. But he was on a live stream with, maybe it was Josh Hart or someone else who in the NBA likes to game. And he said to Josh Hart, keep gaming with me. Who do you have to play tomorrow? And Josh Hart was like, we're playing the Hawks. And Ben was like, oh, you've got plenty of time. Like, you don't have to leave. Like, stay on the live stream with me. Like, how bad does that look? Talk about stuff that doesn't age well. Like, it comes back to just you pay this guy 150 million and he can't even close for you. I get the things that are good about him, but as a Philly fan, Dust, we drafted him in 2014, 2015. Like we've gone through this for 5 years, 6 years. And I think it's real. I hate to give into it. I know everyone's going to be shitting on him. I never wanted to be a trade Ben guy, but what when Embiid is playing this well, when Embiid is, an MVP candidate and was the best player in the court in most games Philly played in, you've got to just be like, we can't waste another Embiid season. We've got to surround him with complementary pieces and, more perimeter scoring that can give Joe space to operate, not just Ben bringing the ball up the court, finding Embiid in the post and then going to sit in the dunker's spot. Like that doesn't help anything. And at the moment he goes to sit in the dunker's spot. And even if he was to get a ball down there, he's probably got no confidence that he's going to go up straight away anyway. I mean, the only basket he got that I can remember was, I think Seth found him literally wide open. There was not a person around him and Ben just dunked it. That's the only clear one I can remember. I think a little bit in today's game, the one time he looked aggressive to drive to the basket, it was an offensive foul. I think John Collins drew that. So it's so bad. I can't believe I can't believe it's gotten to this point, because 6 months ago he was being mentioned for, as you say, for trade value for, to get a guy like James Harden back. So God knows what Daryl can do, in this offseason to try and fix it. I think the only two things that are guaranteed with the starting group is probably Seth and Embiid, and you've got to look at just about everyone else, Tobias included. To sort of go back to Philly, the turnovers were brutal today, Dust. Absolutely brutal. We had 17 and Atlanta had 10. And it's just not going to help. Embiid had 8 turnovers, I think, again today. He had 8 turnovers in game 6. I still don't know how we won game 6. Beyond Tyrese Maxey saving us, because we were down double digits in the first quarter. Simmons got in foul trouble. Tobias got in foul trouble, both picking up quick 2 but right away. It's like, it almost felt like they were ready to mail it in. The way Embiid was playing, it's like he was trying his best to lose us the game, and Tyrese Maxey was the only one that was basically being like, no, I'm not going to let us lose today. You want to go back to, game 4 and 5, a couple of back-to-back epic collapses. Just the choke job is, it was literally like after you thought it couldn't get any worse than game 4, dropping the 18-point lead, and then they back it up with game 5. So look, I've just obviously rambled on a bit there, but I think that's probably a summation of the frustration that Philly fans are feeling right now. It's just how long can we put up with this, especially the ones that have been there since, the process and 10-win seasons, and having to watch Tony Roten run pick and rolls with Henry Sims and bloody have Hollis Thompson shoot threes, and Brandon Davies, watching him run up and down the court. It's been so brutal, absolutely brutal. Just some of those names, people probably have no idea who the hell they are, but it's really dark at the moment for Philly fans. It's scary. We were talking about it before the pod, and you were mentioning how, if Dallas were able to close, then out the Clippers, it's a pretty good opportunity for them, because obviously majority of the Phoenix team is very new to this situation, as well as they played today, and we can get into that. The bottom line is a lot of those guys haven't been in that position and that spotlight, so anything can happen. And the same goes with Philly. Gosh, Milwaukee was certainly not convincing in the way they beat Brooklyn, and Brooklyn were, as very banged up. Milwaukee caught about every break you possibly could when coming up against a juggernaut like the Nets. So golden opportunity blown for Philly. Could have really given, well, to be honest, if we won today's game, I don't know how confident I would be feeling heading into a series against Milwaukee, because again, still don't know how we won game 6, and today we really didn't look great either. So I guess it's just the fact that you never know what could happen in a conference finals, and the fact we don't even get that opportunity to see what could have gone down. That's ultimately the most frustrating thing. And to think we've got to wait another, 12 months to potentially be in that position, to hope the Lakers, aren't there again if we even get through the East. To hope Brooklyn aren't healthy and ready to go. It's all of this stuff it's asking way too much. It really was a bloody good opportunity to not only get to the conference finals, but potentially get to the finals. And it just goes to show that the roster we have wasn't going to work. And there's plenty of work that Daryl has to do this offseason.
Well, I think you touched on a lot of good stuff, and a lot of stuff that Philly fans have been kind of scared about what might happen in the playoffs. And I think these tight moments in playoff series, and particularly in game sevens, they truly kind of reveal the kind of offense and the kind of structure that you need to have to win these impossibly tough games, and to win these series and win these elite matchups with the best teams in the world. It's nothing like the regular season. Like the way that Philly were able to roll over teams in the regular season and score with ease at times and really lock them up defensively, unfortunately it doesn't count for really anything when you come into a game 7 situation against a team like Atlanta. Because I thought even though Huerta had a really nice game today, that Philly did a pretty good job defensively. Atlanta only ended up with 103 points. You think that's in an NBA game, that's extremely beatable. If your offense is firing, you're going to get over 100 points. So when it comes down to Philly specifically on what the problem is, it became clearer and clearer as the series went on that you can't necessarily rely on Embiid to score all the clutch points at the end of the game. He's just, as a center in that position, in the way the NBA is played right now, you just can't really get him the ball and allow him to go to work unless it's in the post or unless they're able to isolate him on the foul line. But it just becomes very difficult for him to do that, for him to score, upwards of 40 and 50 points just with his outside shooting, and that, he gave them a lot this series. Obviously, you touched on the turnovers and how he kind of got frustrated a lot as well, but you need to be able to take the burden off of him a little bit. You need to have someone on the perimeter who can flat out score. And Tobias Harris was really overall disappointing with his shooting numbers in this series. But I think you and I and everyone else knows that we're not expecting him to become, the best offensive player for Philly. We don't expect that out of him at all. So that's when it all comes to Simmons. He's the all-star point guard, and for him to have back-to-back games when he takes less than 5 field goal attempts, it's just not really acceptable, and we don't even have to talk about the free throw shooting. Like, it's abysmal. Like, it's honestly a joke. Like, it's completely unacceptable to be shooting less than 50% at the free throw line and allowing the other team to get back in the game because they're sending you to the free throw line, knowing that you're going to miss. And at the end of the game, I think he forced a really good turnover against Trey with about a minute 10 to go, and then Trey or Huerta fouled him, went straight to the free throw line, missed the first one. All the momentum gets sucked out of the game, and Atlanta get back on top. So that's all on him and his lack of confidence and ability to shoot the ball. And ultimately, that's what led to Philly's demise in this playoffs. Is in clutch situations they don't have that guard that can do anything for them and score on the outside. Like, I thought Seth Curry actually did that role pretty well. In all the clutch situations, he was able to get a nice shot off or play the 2-man game with him, and Embiid probably was their best clutch offense. But like, how can that possibly be that anything that Simmons provides on offense, scoring the ball, is not as good as what they're getting from Seth Curry? Like, that doesn't make any sense, and that's got to fall on Ben and his lack of all around game. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting wait in the offseason to see what changes Daryl Morey does make to this team. It's also another bad mark on Doc Rivers as a coach and
absolutely
what he's been able to do as a coach in the playoffs, and it feels like a systematic problem with the way that the team's built, at least the starting five's built for Philly, with Simmons not being a scorer at the point guard position and having the ball so often. But also it felt like Doc didn't really have the answers to get anything out of their bench offensively. Maxi plays 14 minutes in the game today, puts up 2 shots. I would be borderline tempted to just go with Maxi instead of Simmons down the stretch of this game, knowing what Maxi gave them to save them in that last game, and the clear and actually obvious reluctance of Ben to do anything offensively in terms of shooting or drawing fouls. But I wouldn't put it too much on Doc necessarily, but it's definitely a clear path now that they really know what the problem is with them in the playoffs and winning games, and whatever move they're going to make is going to have to try to rectify that specifically.
Yeah, well, I think the good point you make about needing some perimeter scoring next to Embiid, it's like all the championship teams of the past have had either their best player or second best player can score from the perimeter. Like obviously you've got LeBron, AD can step out, make shots, doesn't always need to rely on, post touches and drawing fouls and all of that sort of stuff. But, before then you obviously have the Golden State days and, beyond them with Steph, KD and Clay. And then when the Raptors won it, they obviously had Kawhi and even Kyle Lowry doing stuff, Van Vliet doing stuff. So all of these teams that have won have had perimeter scoring. And it's looking like that trend's going to continue, because if it's the Bucks that end up winning it all, it's probably going to be because Middleton plays terrific. And you get good production out of Drew. And if, Phoenix,
the Clippers,
whoever gets
how
out,
small they're playing.
Yeah, whoever gets out of the West, either way, they've got really good perimeter scoring. So that's the blueprint to winning championships. And you want to go back as far as even the days with, Kobe and Shaq and how they did a three-peat. When it would get down the stretch and teams would obviously look to foul Shaq straight away, that's where Kobe would come in and help and save the day, and, all of that sort of stuff. So there's enough historical evidence to show that if you don't have perimeter scoring, you're going to be in trouble. So look, we know, well, at least we think we know one thing about Daryl Morey is he's pretty cutthroat GM. If it's not going to work, you make the changes without too much hesitation. If he's did it with bringing in Chris Paul and that didn't work, bringing in Westbrook, that didn't work. Or what, did he bring in Dwight one year? So he's not afraid to try different things and not really run it back when there's no need to. So, gosh, I really hope it hasn't gotten to a point where Simmons' trade value is so low that, Philly have no choice but to run it back, because it's the options on the table could be bad. So that's sort of the big picture take. I'd be absolutely distraught if we have to run it back with the same group, because you just know what's going to happen. Probably have a good regular season and then comes to the playoffs and it's just going to be the same thing that happens. So I'm sort of resigned to the fact that if Simmons is to get better and he's to really improve, it won't be with Philly. It'd probably have to be with, his own team, where the other 4 guys or the roster even is built around Simmons as being the main guy. So it's unfortunate, but it's something you just probably have to accept after 5-6 years of having Ben, that for whatever reason it just seems like he's not built to handle the tough moments. And it's true, a lot of people say he hasn't improved offensively since his rookie year, and it's really hard to deny that. You watch highlights I was in particular watching his summer league Vegas highlights. He was hitting jumpers from, the mid-range and all that and looking really confident. And that's almost peak Ben Simmons in terms of his offense, which is crazy to think, that he was at his best potentially offensively when he was 18, 19 and hadn't played a game in the big leagues yet. So it's pretty disappointing, but the proof's in the pudding. It sucks. I hope we can get something back that's of decent value, but it's hard to see it, and it will even suck even more if it gets to a situation where it has to be like, if you want something decent back for a trade package involving Ben, you're going to need to put in multiple picks, or you're going to need to put in one of Maxi, Matisse, or maybe both if you want something valuable back, because that's what teams will be asking for. You made the point of it. Is the playoffs show everything. They expose you or they make you, and it's really exposed Ben. And try and tell me that, all other 29 GMs aren't glued in or locked into the playoffs at the moment and what's going on, other than obviously Daryl Morey. So everyone can see it. Everyone knows his trade value is extremely low, and there's like clear issues. And look, to sort of, I guess, wrap things up and not have to mention Philly anymore, is looking ahead to the Olympics in Australia. Would the Boomers even want Simmons? Like, I know it's a crazy thing, but I just don't see how bringing a guy like that into the environment would look. Maybe because the Boomers and Australians, the makeup of the culture is never give up and always push hard and overcome any barrier that you face, and the never say die attitude of the group. Maybe that will help Ben, but if the Simmons that played for Philly this playoffs shows up for the Boomers in the Olympics, that's not going to help the team at all. That's literally going to hinder them. And I don't exactly know the difference in FIBA rules to NBA rules, but if teams can clearly utilize the hacker Simmons throughout the game, then what will Australia have to do other than just put Ben on the bench to make sure they keep momentum going? So I don't know how you feel about that in terms of the immediate future, because the Olympics is in a month, 6 weeks.
30
so
days.
How do you feel about that?
I think I really would love to see him play, just go out there and at least, put your hand up for this tournament and put yourself out there and, make yourself vulnerable in a situation where it's not all about you. Because it feels like in Philly, he's the all-star player. He's the, $195 million contract guy. He's an all-star and, he's the point guard. It's his team. He runs it, stuff like that. So I would love to see him just kind of put his ego aside a little bit to come and play for the Boomers and get humbled, because the reality is that we've got a lot of better scorers in the Australian team than him. Lots of them, We've got Paddy Mills has led the Olympics in scoring before. He was absolutely phenomenal for us in the World Cup in China. He was elite. So, I'd like to see him get a role on the team rather than, come in and demand to be the point guard. And I would rather have a guy like Delhi out there running the point than him. But what we can utilize him and how I think it makes it a lot easier what his transition into the FIBA game is, because he can now just be a forward. He can just defend big guys. He can rebound like a beast. He can set lots of screens. He can play the interior. And because there's no defensive three in the key in the FIBA style, he can really be an absolute, beast defensively inside the paint. He can guard big guys and small guys with ease. And I think it'll potentially be something that'll be great for him, to get away from all the noise that's inevitably coming, in Philly, and all the the trade chatter that we're already even talking about now. But for him to step away from that, prove something with the Australian team, and kind of play a different style of hoops and try to get some confidence in his own game once again, I think that'll be really not only good for the Australian team but good for him. So I think it'll actually be it's an easy decision for him if he does come and play, and I feel like no matter what, he'll be successful, just making us instantly a better defensive team and better in transition and just way more athletic, as the Australian team as a whole. But yeah, I really hope he does that. I think it kind of, pissed me off a little bit that he half put his hand up to do it, in the World Cup, and then at the last second decided, no, I'm not going to do it and focus on my NBA career. Well, now the NBA career is kind of at its, the real biggest point of adversity he's ever had in his career. So I look for him to kind of bounce back and hopefully do that with the Boomers.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess the thing there, right, is I don't know who Australia has in their group, but no, in terms of like who do they have to play in the Olympics? Who's in their group? Because obviously it goes without saying that you'll need not only Ben but Matisse on the floor a lot to defensively for especially the US team, given the amount of names that have dropped as of late with guys that are going to play for them. Durant being one of the latest additions, but you've already got Tatum that's committed, Booker, Beal, Draymond. There's Lillard. So there's so much scoring that you just, even if Ben's just out there defensively, you're probably going to need that along with, Thibault. So look, that's a bright spot, at least to speak about something from Philly. Like, other than Matisse missing a wide open three there at the sort of at the end, that really would have helped spark and give us some great momentum to close out today's game. But overall, I thought he gave the team good energy, active hands.
I think every team wants it. Every team wants a guy like Thibault to be able to, come out there and defend. And if he can become a knockdown 3-point shooter, all of a sudden he becomes like a starter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's the Simmons thing has just disappointed me so much. I mean, there's every chance that, he comes out one season and it's just similar to Embiid. We were sort of questioning, could he get his diet right, to get his conditioning in shape, and will he have that mindset to just, whoever his defender is, just bully him down low and just relentlessly attack the rim. And, we saw that a lot this season. And,
there's a game that I want to go back and watch is what happened in that Philly game at Utah, where he managed to score 49 points. I want to go and have a look at that, because
the Simmons game, I think it was 42, but yeah.
What kind of NBA player can score 40 in a game in regulation?
You're right.
But then have back-to-back games when he only attempts a total of 9 shots. It's really puzzling in terms of what's going on in his mind when he's steps onto the court about how we're going to win this game, because you can't win if you don't score. You just can't.
I don't think Ben's ever been told no in his life. I think anyone around him has always been, blowing smoke up his ass and telling him how good he is. And then just through his combination of speed, size, athleticism, he's just always been able to dominate, at the lower levels. And he's just always thought he's the man. So I guess the mindset is completely different to a guy like Embiid, who I suppose come from a tough background in Cameroon and then picked up the game late and went to Kansas and developed a little bit and kept having injury after injury, whether it be doing his back, heading into sort of the draft, and then also doing his foot and his knee. And there's been so many issues with Embiid, but it seems like he's always had that mindset that he's got to always improve. He's got to always try his best to get better. And it seems like Simmons, there's a lot of times where you watch Philly games and you go, does this guy even care? And it's, I'm not sure he does at certain stages. So it's just really a disappointing way to end the year. On top of blowing a golden opportunity, it's now suddenly like, well, it just can't be the same group that we start the 2021-2022 season with. It just can't be. There's too much evidence that it's just not going to work. So you'd have to be a fool to run it back.
Well, depending on how, what kind of moves they're able to potentially make, and maybe what they could do in the draft and things like that. They might have to start next season with a relatively similar group and then look to make a change as the season goes, because it's we judge them on a very tight scale. Like the team was number 1 in the East. Embiid, was as close as you could get to the MVP. Basically, he scoring the ball better than anyone in the league, absolutely dominant. Ben's all defensive team there. It's a good regular season. Like it is. It's the best regular season they've had, since Ben and Embiid got there. But the disappointment in the playoffs really takes this thing out of it. And I suppose it kind of leans on what you were saying about Ben, how he seems like, he's super, super focused on becoming a superstar and being one of the best in the league. But is he really that dedicated to doing whatever it takes to win in the playoffs? And the truth is that it's the hardest thing to do in basketball, to win in the playoffs. A team with Kevin Durant and James Harden just got knocked out. That's how difficult it is. LeBron and AD got knocked out. That's how, cutthroat and difficult it is to win at this level. So, yeah, he's definitely got some questions to ask about himself. And hopefully we can see him turn it around sooner rather than later with the Boomers. I'm just looking at the Olympic schedule. So there's a bunch of qualifying going on right now. And so we've got Nigeria is the other team in our pool confirmed.
Okay.
And then we're going to have two of the European qualifiers will come and play against us. Hopefully,
could it be Luca?
Hopefully the Slovenian team gets through. I'd love to see Slovenia and Luca up against Australia. That'd be an absolute ripper.
Man, all right. Let's move on from.
Do you want to touch on the Mavericks and the changes that we've made?
Yeah. We're gonna get to that. So it makes sense to just touch on a few of the other games that have gone on the last couple of days, and then we'll get to the off the court news because there's been a lot that's gone down. So it feels like ages since this game happened, but I guess everyone was so focused on the collapse of Philly that potentially that this game got kind of missed. But Utah Clippers game 6, the collapse of Utah there.
The Terrence Mann game.
Is that what it comes down to for you? Because they held was it 22-point lead at halftime? Maybe it was 20 something, and it just looked like everything was trending towards Utah forcing a game 7 back at home, and then suddenly the Clippers just a second half avalanche. What did they? I think they scored 79 points in the second half. Reggie Jackson had 22 points and 10 assists in the second half alone. It was ridiculous. I guess it's really one of those games where it was a tale of two halves. The first half, Utah came out. Donovan was making a lot of perimeter shots, which he kind of had to, given his sort of limited health, limited abilities because of his health. The ankle was clearly affecting his explosiveness and ability to sort of get to the rim. And Clarkson even got hot there in that. Was it end of the first, sort of second quarter, where he had 18
20
straight?
in the first half.
Yeah, 20 in the first half. So it was
Zero
all
in the second half.
It was all Utah, and then the game just completely flipped to the Clippers. And the fact that Beverly was even hitting perimeter shots, it was just kind of like, all right, this just might not be the Clippers' night. And so I wonder if it would have been a completely different series if a guy like Mike Conley was healthy and available to play the prior 5 games. But that's all hypothetical because injuries seem to be a part of, the playoffs every single year. So I think it's unfortunate for Utah that, that they weren't able to at least make a Western Conference Finals. But how do you sort of look at that game in particular, the game 6?
I think game 6, it played a lot like game 5 because in game 5, Utah did a similar thing in the first half. I think they hit like 15 threes or 16 threes in the first half. Like they were on track to, basically destroy them from the 3-point line. And when they're at the best, Utah, that's what they do. They're shooting close to 53s a game throughout the playoffs. So, I guess what stood out was both in game 5 and game 6, Utah were able to shoot the piss out of the ball basically in the first half and dominate offensively without, putting the Clippers away necessarily. The kind of the small ball lineups that the Clippers had gone to, and Ty Lue completely shortened that rotation as the series. As soon as Kawhi went out, it was like, nah, I'm not playing anyone who's not a guard who can't switch on the perimeter. And, they completely got on top in terms of the style of the game because the more that Utah jacked up threes, the more that Gobert became basically a zero offensively, not able to score or draw fouls or any of that. And you talked about Mitchell, shooting a lot from the perimeter and not breaking down the defense, getting all the way to the rim and scoring, putting any actual heat on the rim. So just a matter of the game basically turned onto the Clippers' style. They were able to play, the way that the Clippers were able to play basically a 5-out style and drive and kick with extreme efficiency. I think it kind of, you got to give some credit to the way that Paul George played and Reggie Jackson and even Beverly when he was out there, that they were able to get into the paint, draw defenders in particular, draw Gobert in to help out. And the amount of times that, it was a strong drive from the Clippers that, didn't necessarily need a lot of help, but it's just the blueprint and it's the style that Utah played defensively for Gobert to come aggressively and help on that. It just led them into basically leaving Clippers wide open for threes. Terrence Mann, he scores 40 points and hits 7 3-pointers, 7 out of 9. And for me, Terrence Mann didn't show anything necessarily that I didn't already know about his game. He just drove hard when he had an opportunity. He took a wide open three when he had a look. It's not like he was killing guys one-on-one and became an unstoppable offensive player. It was just the way that the game played out. They were able to draw Gobert in on a lot of their drives to the hoop. And then Terrence Mann was shooting uncontested 3-pointers. Like, he's an NBA player. Like, I felt like a lot of the threes that the Clippers were hitting in the second half were wide open shots that, you would expect anyone at the NBA level to have the confidence to knock it down. And credit to them, the crowd got into it massively and they started rolling because, they didn't just hit a few threes, they hit timely ones and they hit back-to-back ones that really dug like a dagger right into the heart of Utah. And Utah became desperate and threw up more tough shots, and their offense basically fell to nothing at the end, Utah as well. So I think Utah have a similarly large question looming over them, whether they can roll with Rudy Gobert in clutch situations of playoff series when they're closing it out, especially a Game 7, because it seems like to compete and to score at the score offensively at the highest level in Game 7 and in closeout situations, you basically need to be a small lineup, unless you can somehow find a guy, a center who can defend the perimeter permanently and can stay on the floor and score the ball. And yeah, I think Gobert, for as amazing of a season he's had in the last 3 years, he's got a similar question as to Ben, as to, can you give us anything offensively? And if we build the whole regular season defense around you, are we able to abandon that strategy in a playoff series? What do you think about that?
Gosh, what's Utah's option if they were to go small ball and match up with the Clippers there, where the Clippers went small? I mean, you have probably 6 candidates, right? If you have Conley, Mitchell, Clarkson, Ingles, Bogdanovich, and Royce O'Neal, which one of those guys isn't in the closing 5 small ball situation?
It's a very small lineup. That's like
exactly.
Those guards are small when you talk about Conley, Clarkson,
Mitchell.
Mitchell's only 5'8" or something.
I think he's 6. I think he's 6'1" or 6'2", Mitchell, and a lot of people don't realize how small he is because I guess his athleticism kind of can hide the fact that he's not a very tall guy. But yeah, that suddenly leaves him in a vulnerable position there. Even if they were to go small and try and match up, as you say, with the Clippers going small. So, gosh, they're definitely in a predicament themselves, and they're a sort of another team that's locked into paying Gobert big money. I think Gobert is he on 40 plus million a season for the next 4 or 5 years? It's a big number because he got the all NBA team a few years ago, right? I don't know what his current deal is now, but big.
He made third team all NBA this year, defensive player of the year. He's in the midst of a 4-year, $102 million contract.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're talking $25 million a season for the best regular season defender in the league, but ultimately a bit of a zero on offense, right?
Yeah, I really don't know where they go. I remember messaging you after, you sort of saying that when you texted me after the game saying that the issue was, that Quinn Snyder didn't make the adjustment to take Gobert off, but kind of looking at who they could have thrown out there, you're probably not putting out Niang or Favors because they don't help.
That's true.
So I suppose he kind of looked down his bench and he goes, well, what options do I have? So I kind of think the only thing that they can do moving forward, given the pieces they have, given the age of a lot of their guys, is you've kind of just got to hope Mitchell evolves to an MVP type player. I mean, I know he's really good at the moment, and he's shown in his postseason appearances that he's been reliable. Like I can't really remember a bad game where he's had say sub 20 points. Like it seems every night. Yes, he does put up a large volume of shots, and he might not have the greatest efficiency on some nights, but it seems like in the playoffs, he's been able to regularly put up, 30 plus and really help his team because I suppose they don't, as you've said many times, that the regular season ball movement isn't translating to the playoffs. So they really needed Mitchell to stand up. And so far from what I've seen, he's been able to do a pretty good job. Like he gave his all in that game 6. Like he still had, 39, 9 and 9. Like, and that's on a
9 of 15 from 3.
It's on a bum ankle. So I don't really know what more you could expect kind of from the guy. So that's the only real pathway I see. Can Donovan Mitchell turn into an MVP where, he's just literally Dwayne Wade 2.0 and is just can control the game and just do everything in his power to help lead his team. But I can't really see, because Ingles is old. Conley's obviously old. Bogdanovich is old. So if they're to try and move and to upgrade any of these sort of players, like I don't know what they can get back for him, given that they're 28 plus. I know Ingles is obviously 30 plus, and Conley's 30 plus, and Bogdanovich is close. So those are the 3 guys. And you wouldn't probably move Clarkson because he's so important to your bench. I can't really see a pathway, Das, other than hoping Mitchell gets better. How do you see it?
I think you're right that, you can't be too harsh on Snyder in terms of not taking Gobert off at the end of game 6, because you're right that, for them having the 6th man of the year for the rest of their bench, they didn't have a lot of depth. Derek Favors, who I actually like as a player, I think is quite solid, but he didn't really get involved in the series at all. And I suppose that's probably due to just how small the Clippers went. But yeah, with Utah, I think the fundamental problem that's stopping them from accelerating further in the playoffs is Gobert and his lack of offense. If he's going to play the whole game and the other team is, they're going to go really small, you've got to be able to punish them somehow. Otherwise, Gobert is going to get played off the floor, and that's ultimately what happened. Terrence Mann hit 7 threes and scored 40 points, and his direct matchup basically for the game was Gobert. So when Gobert, has an efficient 5 or 6 and scores 12 points, great. Yeah, but you played 42 minutes. And you're the only 7-footer out there. So I know it's, we could say a similar thing about Kristaps and the way that he played in the series against the Clippers. How come he wasn't able to expose their lack of size when he was out on the floor to score the ball? But for them to make the jump and for them to get to get further and potentially win a championship, Gobert, he needs to diversify his offensive game. He needs to work out how to score the ball a little bit better, because they got 39 out of Mitchell. They got 20 out of Clarkson off the bench. Royce O'Neal had a fluky good game, scored 20 points. Bogdanovich gave him 14. Conley obviously was injured. They could have got better from him. But, I'm looking at the third-team All-NBA player and saying, you're the guy who should be getting 20 in a closeout game. We need at least 20 out of you. So, Gobert, it's tough to see him making a lot of changes in his game when he's so far through his career. But if you want to become the best and become a champion, you've got to, you've really got to find an extra level. And for me, it's Rudy scoring the ball.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that, the trio, Simmons, KP and Gobert, they've got to develop a post game. You've just got to. It's absolutely crucial for, them to take another step and develop. So, gosh, I wouldn't know about Ben being able to do that. But.
It was, for Utah's disappointment, it was, the Clippers and, Ty Lue, he's basically cut their team down to the bone and figured out which guys he's going to go with. And it's worked, without Kawhi, they've been able to get back-to-back great performances from Man. Morris is really finding his way. I think Batum has been excellent, particularly defensively. He's been able to hold his own against basically anyone that the Mavericks or the Jazz have put up against him. And he's starting to find his touch. He was 4 from 6 from 3 in that closeout game. He's playing
sneaky athletic.
Gosh, he's playing close to 40 minutes for them. And 2 years ago he looked like he was athletically completely washed. So I think you can liken what his revival has been like to what you've seen from Blake Griffin and the Nets, because they've both really shown people that we're still gun players, we're still great athletes, and I guess it's really taken good coaching and a small ball lineup to show them their value and their worth. I think the Clippers have got to get some credit for what they've done, because Reggie Jackson's come out of nowhere playing the best basketball of his career. Paul George is, even without Kawhi, looks calm and confident, and definitely playing some of the best ball of his career. So for all the hating that a lot of people do on the Clippers, you got to enjoy these 2 back-to-back series wins that they've had, backs against the wall ultimately. So really interested to see how this Phoenix Clippers series goes. It's I don't think either of those teams would have thought for sure that they would be in the conference finals with a legit shot to win the championship, but here we are, and both those teams are as good as favourites, just behind Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think that's really accurate. You can't give enough credit to Ty Lue. I mean, going back to the Cleveland days, it was him who led them back from down 3-1. I know it's obviously at the end of the day, it's Kyrie and LeBron that put them on their back, the team on the back, but the coach is just as crucial to keep the belief in the locker room and, to really do everything in his power to make sure he's putting the best possible team on the floor. So
he puts Pat Bev out there, and he's been a guy who's been shoved to the bench for the whole Maverick series. Like, he dumped him basically. And if Pat Beverly doesn't have a good relationship with Ty Lue, then he definitely doesn't come out, play 26 minutes, hit 3 big threes and help them win that game.
Absolutely.
And Kennard basically didn't play the whole first series, and he came in and gave them some stuff at critical moments in this Jazz series. So yeah, definitely some credit for them.
Yeah, and I know that there was stuff in the offseason how Paul George was talking about the way Doc Rivers was using him as like a Ray Allen type player. I remember there were famous offseason quotes where Paul George was saying, I was being put in all these pin downs and used as like a perimeter shooter, and that's not where I excel. And I remember Doc being asked about all of that, and Doc made some sort of comment saying, well, I don't expect the team to be too different in terms of how they play this year, because the guy who's now leading them was on the bench with me last year when we epically collapsed. And that take has aged so poorly, because Doc has now, obviously been, whether it's his fault or not, he's now a part of another situation where if Philly played how they should have, this series should have been wrapped up in 5. But fucked around in the end and didn't come out ready to play in game 1 and lost that at home. And, now it's sort of look where Doc Rivers is and look where Ty Lue is. So, again, probably another cross there and another L that Doc has to probably wear. But I think it just goes back to Ty Lue, and gosh, 0-2 in both series, and game 3 in Dallas, first quarter down 30-11, and everyone was ready to kill the Clips, and they seem to have done it again. So, or he seems, to have done it again, where he's been able to really overcome. Talk about a guy that's mentally tough. Gosh,
didn't panic.
I'd wonder his effect and his impact that he could have potentially on a guy like Ben Simmons. So, it's really good. Credit to the Clippers, as much as it's, Utah need to do this and Utah needs to do that. I think you're right in saying you've got to look at the Clippers and give them their dues for what they were able to produce so far in the playoffs. And game 6, they had full capacity for their crowd. So they're back to being on basically level footing with every other team. I know they're obviously in a series with Phoenix where their fans are absolute nutcases, and that they have a real home advantage. So it's good that the Clippers have somewhat of a chance to be able to match that home court environment with, not just, I don't know what the percentage was it half, how it's been through the playoffs, and majority was, cardboard cutouts when you'd see the shots of the crowd. You just wouldn't know if it was a real person or not. So now it's good to know that they're, at least in the same playing field as everyone else in the playoffs. So that'll be an awesome series. We can talk about that a little bit after this, wrapping up the last game of the conference semis, and that's obviously Brooklyn-Milwaukee Game 7 that took place yesterday, Das. So to speak about that, how do you sort of? I think the most impressive thing was probably the Bucks' resilience. I thought there was plenty of chances there where they didn't even score in OT for like the first 4 minutes, and then was it a Giannis bucket and then Middleton bucket, and it was pretty impressive because they had every reason to sort of, well, not every reason, obviously got a chance to play in the conference finals, but when things were looking like it was Brooklyn that were going to find a way to win it and somehow, push their way through to the conference finals, the Bucks really stood up. I don't think you got a great Drew Holiday game, but he was awesome in the fourth quarter. I think going into the fourth, he was 2 of 17 from the field going into the fourth, Drew Holiday, and he hit some very timely shots. He obviously hit the big three that you're mentioning from sort of the elbow, and then he hit a really nice baseline jumper. So credit to him. They obviously had to. I think PJ Tucker goes without saying was pretty awesome that series, and just how much
he hit a three, right? I don't think he hit a three the whole series. Yeah, 3 in the most critical game. That's coming out at the right time.
I suppose it was a case of he was exerting so much energy and his focus was defense that I guess the offense was an afterthought. But the fact that he came up big, scoring the ball in the fourth. When did the Bucks win by 3 points, 2 points, however much they won by? 4 points. So as you say, it's probably pretty obvious that the Bucks aren't going to be winning that game if PJ Tucker gives you, a donut or even 3 points from the field like he had been for the majority of this series. But I suppose the tail of it from the Brooklyn side, right, is it's just a shame they had so many injuries, and the fact that Harden wasn't even, 50%. You just saw in all of his threes, just no lift. He couldn't get
2 for 12. Yeah,
it was very tough on him. So good on him for soldiering and playing through it. And the Kyrie ankle injury was just such poor timing, and you just saw at the end there. If the thing I'll finish on is obviously the Durant turnaround to send it to OT, and the camera shot that went straight to him, and he was like, "Fuck." Man, it was just pretty clear as day that he was, pissed. He wanted that to be a 3 because he knew probably he didn't have much left in the tank, and he really needed that to sort of win the game. And the OT wasn't going to be the best result for them, so that's probably what it comes down to in the end. It was an all-time series from Durant. He probably did just about as much as you could ask, and it was a pretty good, as a neutral, it was a pretty good Game 7.
Absolutely. I think you're right that was possibly one of the most clutchest shots ever. That
crazy
doesn't matter anymore, just because of half an inch that he didn't get behind the 3-point line. If he makes that an inch and a half behind, we're talking about one of the greatest Game 7 game winners maybe ever, on par with what Kawhi did, just 2 seasons ago, knocking out Philly in the Game 7. Because I thought Tucker played strong defense on that, forced him to drive inside the 3-point line and then do a spinning fadeaway where he barely gets a look at the basket. But you just thought that it was definitely going in the way that, Durant has been playing and the tear that he's been on. He got 48 points. He was everything and more for Brooklyn, doing it all defensively as well. But yeah, that was a humongous shot. Absolutely, kind of reaffirming everything we know about how clutch and how good Kevin Durant is. And yeah, honestly, half an inch is the difference between Brooklyn going through and maybe trying to find a way to get past Atlanta and get through into at that stage we all thought it was going to be Philly, but that inch is the difference between Milwaukee going through or Brooklyn in a Game 7, and you can't ask for much more in a Game 7 than it to come down to a last second shot like that. I think for everything that Durant did in that final game, Giannis was awesome. In this in this game 7, I don't know how many dunks he got, but that's the kind of physical, athletically dominant and just forceful play that, defines when he's on top of the other team. A couple of those, like he got a really nice dunk off an inbound play. He got a couple of great runs in transition when he was just able to use his long step and just throw the ball down with extreme force. For Blake Griffin, who's done a pretty admirable job trying to guard Giannis the whole season. The whole series. And for such a good offensive game that Blake had, 17 points, 3 threes, he ultimately, was fouled out. He ultimately couldn't be there in the clutch situations because of just how tough Giannis was the whole game and how he had it all going offensively. Giannis, he's been a dreadful free throw shooter as well during this series, but he's able to make 8 of 14, and that's just enough to help them win this game. And it truly does matter. He missed 6, and that's probably an asterisk against him, but he made 8. He wasn't scared to go to the free throw line in the clutch situation. He made 1 out of 2 at the crucial moment. So I think Giannis really was the reason that they got this win, because he played like an MVP. Game 7, he gave them 40 on 62%. He fouled out Blake Griffin. He was able to score points in the fourth quarter, just finding a way. So a lot of credit to him, and that's got to give these guys a lot of confidence. They were dealt a good hand with the Kyrie injury, and obviously with Harden going out in game 1 and not playing to his highest standards when he came back. But now they're playing Atlanta in a 7-game series for a chance to go to the finals. And with a fully fit lineup, I think the Bucks are primed to potentially take out the championship this year. It's fallen really beautifully for them after this game 7 win. I'm not sure if the monkey is completely off their back just for winning this one game 7, but I thought that it was a bold statement for Coach Bud to basically not use his bench at all. Connaughton proved to be their guy off the bench, and he gave them 3 threes, which was huge. And Tucker was able to give them enough offense for him to stay out there the whole game. But I look at this and see that Brook Lopez, plays 46 minutes, and he's able to give them 19 points. And what you expect from him defensively, he gives them 4 blocks as well. So he had 3 3-pointers and shot 7 of 11 from the field. So I think Lopez was a huge key in this particular game. The fact that he was able to stay out there, be effective on the offensive end, and obviously do his normal work protecting the rim was a humongous key for the Bucks. And you could say that, Brooklyn's other guys outside of Durant, and obviously a hindered Harden, barely making a 3-pointer, 2 of 12. Brucey Brown tried hard, got him a few baskets, but Joe Harris, they really needed one game from him in this series where he was able to hit 7 or 8 threes and score 30 and win them the game. That's what they needed, and they weren't able to get that. And I suppose you got to give credit to Milwaukee for the rest of their players outside of Giannis and Middleton for getting it done offensively and doing enough to defensively stop these other guys from going off.
Yeah. What the hell happened to Joe Harris? Like, I can't believe that. He was so far in his own head that even open shots, you weren't sure he was going to knock them down. I think the only 2 I remember him knocking down was in game 7, where he sort of got out ahead of the pack, and they were almost like fast break threes where he hit them. But anytime in the half court, you just had no confidence he was going to knock him down, and it was clear he had no confidence. So that's a real shame that he sort of lost his way.
We can look back to that shot in game 3 where they basically had the game won. Durant had got him to a 4-point lead, and then I think they were up 1 or 2, less than 40 seconds to go. Durant gets doubled, throws it to Harris on the elbow, like one of those shots when you're almost too open and it becomes difficult because there's no one anywhere near you, and he just misses it. Like that would have sealed that game and maybe the series, but felt like he never recovered from that miss.
Yeah, good point. And the last sort of thing I'll touch on from the Brooklyn side is the hero of game 5, other than the ridiculous Durant, 40-point triple-double was Jeff Green. And
12 minutes, no shots.
What happened? So I really don't get that. I wonder if he was injured. I wonder I don't get that, as you say, he played 12 minutes there. And I think his biggest stat line was 3 fouls because he only had 1 assist and 1 rebound. So I don't get that at all. That's super confusing for me because he was just.
They didn't really try Shaman either. They didn't try Shaman either.
Did Shamit? Well, neither Shamit or Jeff Green had a shot attempt. They didn't even have a field goal attempt. So I'm really not sure with those rotations in particular. They brought in Claxton for bloody 1 second to try and defend the inbound, similar to when I guess the Mavs have done it in the past. Bringing in Boban to sort of just be a big body there to stop an easy pass from the sideline. So they're the only things that are kind of confusing to me. Gosh, you feel like if Harris shot the ball better, they probably win and find a way to win the series. And I know you mentioned game 3 in particular, and you got about all you could out of Blake Griffin, and I thought Bruce Brown was good, and clearly Harden was doing the most he could given his limitations with his injury.
Still got 10 free throws, so that was good for him. But
exactly, he was still sort of finding a way. But gosh,
I guess the Bucks just made it real hard on them. They did sub it all. The Bucks kept their lineup out there, and like you bring in Shamet, so they probably give the ball to Middleton, or they give it to Holiday and they go straight at him. Or they bring in Jeff Green, and then Giannis is going to go straight at him. So I suppose when it gets to these game 7s, they're a different beast. It's extremely tight, and there's basically hardly any subbing, and they just kind of roll with who they think their best 5 is. And I think Nash leaned on the defensive end and decided to go with Brown basically over Jeff Green. And, as good as Jeff Green was in that game 5, can we really expect that he would have, been able to go off again in game 7? It would have been special if he did. But I think ultimately, the Bucks are the healthier team. They potentially could have won the series earlier. And I think they're definitely probably a stronger representative of the Eastern Conference if they do get through than a Brooklyn Nets team with half of James Harden and no Kyrie.
Yeah, that's fair. Just looking at the numbers, especially in the must-win games, like you as you sort of mentioned it, you got to kind of give credit to what Giannis and Middleton were able to do there. In game 3, obviously backs against the wall, 40-point blowout in game 2. Middleton and Giannis basically scored their whole points, right? They combined for 68 of the 86 that they scored. Game 4, they then combined for 53 points. Then game 7, what did they combine for in that? Was it 60 plus again?
63 and 16 boards, 11 assists.
Well, Giannis had 30 and Middleton had 38. Or that was game 6, right?
Yeah, they did in game 6 too. They were basically combining for 65 plus.
So in the most crucial games, all of those guys stood up. So 68, 53, 68, and as you just said, 63 in game 7. So if your 2 best players are going to do that, then potentially that's the story of the game. And we obviously know that this series would have been completely different if Brooklyn were healthy, but that's a part of it. We've spoken about it just before. Health is a part of playoffs, and some luck is involved, and that's always been the case with teams winning the championship in the past. So we can get into doing a quick preview of the conference finals, but I think that's probably what would leave things at with that Brooklyn-Milwaukee series, unless there's anything else you want to touch on.
I think, Brooklyn healthy are going to be probably the scariest team in the league next year with a lot of continuity, and it'd be interesting to see what other pieces they could get together for a new run next season, because these superstars in their prime in a playoff series, it's just about the toughest thing to beat you could possibly think of. So interested to see what they do next year. I think they probably come out as favourites to win the East next year, but ultimately, now the Bucks have a golden opportunity, and maybe even the Hawks have an opportunity to get into the Eastern to get into the finals. That's completely unfathomable when they were 15 and 20 leading up to the All-Star break, and now they're 4 wins away from the finals. Can't believe it.
I don't want to even
That's
think
the
about
NBA
it.
for you.
I don't want to even think about it. So the before previewing the conference finals, now that we wrapped up the sort of games that have been over the past few days, the off the court news, and this directly involves you, Das. So your Mavs in the headlines, potentially thought I could get a bit of a break from speaking about Dallas when the season ended, but to my surprise, you guys are in the news again, and I'm happy to sort of preface and update listeners if they're not sure what sort of went down before throwing it over to you with how you feel about it all. But effectively, it was an article that basically brought to light potentially some power struggle in the front office, and it involved this guy whose name is Haralabob Valgaris, who's used to be a big time sort of sports gambler, and then he joined the Mavs in an analytical role. Was Cuban's hire, and it's come to light now from this article that potentially Haralabob had more say than many would have liked, whether it was input into personnel decisions or pushing forward rotations to Carlisle. There was numerous reports that not only players were upset, but coaches were upset, and other front office members, in particular scouts, were upset with Valgaris having such a big input into many different things that were going on with the Mavs performance side of things. And there was one in particular that brought up where all the scouts and front office members basically wanted Sadiq Bey with your first round pick, but apparently Valgaris wanted Josh Green because the data and the numbers suggested that he would be a better fit and a better pick for the team. All of this was sort of then brought to Cuban, who said the reports were BS, and then sort of less than 48 hours later, or maybe a bit longer, the longtime GM, Donnie Nelson, left, and then obviously Rick Carlisle left. So I think I've covered everything, and that's sort of the summation of what kind of went down. But as obviously a diehard Mavericks fan, how do you feel about the whole situation, and what do you even make of it?
I think it's quite interesting. I think the Mavs probably did a pretty decent job of kind of keeping this stuff out of the media and keeping it behind closed doors, because, you can't run a front office and you can't have team continuity and everyone being on the same page unless, you're not doing it out in public in the media's eye. You've got to be able to have some trust within the office. And I suppose there's been a big transition, from when we were able to acquire Luka in the trade, which was, probably the last outstanding move that was made by Donnie Nelson Jr. Is like, he's been a guy who, if you've read anything about it, it's, he's followed Luka since he was basically a baby, since he was 13 years old playing in Europe, and he knew that he was going to be a big target for us. And for him to acquire Luka is basically, that's the key, most important part of what's happening in the future of the Mavericks. So it's kind of disappointing to see him go. But from what I've been able to gauge about, what's happening in the front office, is that we all know that Mark Cuban still has a lot of influence over the decisions and what's going on. And this guy, Valgaris, who he's brought in, has been there for 2 or 3 years, obviously has Mark's ear about some important things. And, it's interesting, and it's also, a bit concerning that some players and some of the assistant coaching staff, kind of don't agree necessarily with that form of decision making and the way that Cuban's doing it with Valgaris. But I think ultimately, it's his decision, and I think, for the change to be made from the GM perspective, definitely means that we're going to kind of allow different voices to have a bigger say in what we do next for this team. Because definitely, with a new coach and with a new GM running, making our acquisitions and our draft process and things like that, we will probably, we'll probably see some drastic changes, I think, in kind of the character and the way of thinking of the team. I think both the GM and Rick Carlisle, when they've been there for close to 13 years, not only has the team changed a lot, but the way that the NBA is played and the way that, but I guess the nature of the players and the expectations of, young players coming into the team and young superstar like Luka coming in is a lot different, I suppose. The kind of the way that they can talk to each other and the way that they can interact and the way that they get the best out of each other is definitely different. Carlisle has always seemed to me to be an absolute no nonsense, no BS kind of guy. And a guy who I could imagine would be pretty difficult to kind of talk to or difficult to tell him that he's wrong about anything in terms of NBA coaching, given his experience and success. So, I'm excited about the change, and I think it was obvious that we needed to make a change. And I think the timing is quite good. You finish a series, you play really, a really long, hard season and series and lose. We have our exit interviews. We kind of make a quick analysis of how we're going to move forward. And, to change up the coach is a drastic move, but I think it's a really attractive job. And I think we'll definitely get some really great candidates. And if we can get someone that gels well with Luka and hopefully with Porzingis, then I think we could see, a definite improvement in the Mavericks team. I don't see us going backwards in any way. And I think with certain clubs and clubs that go really well, it's not very often that you're going to be able to keep the same GM and coach through like a 20-year plus period. Basically Popovich is the only guy, and Arsene Buford the only people that have ever been able to do that. So I think we've had a good long run with these two in particular in the front office and head coach, and I think it's probably the right time to make a move. It seems like it's been amicable by the thoughts of it, and I think that it's a positive move for the Mavericks at this stage.
Yeah. So look, I'm certainly don't have a real place to comment. Obviously, being a Philly fan and our disaster and history of front office. Freaking Brett Brown was our GM for one off season when things were that bad, and obviously he was a part of the decision-making process there to trade Bridges for, I can't even think of his name. Who did we trade Bridges for that ended up getting, this is bad, I can't remember it, but we traded.
He's not playing in the league, so.
He never even really panned out and played.
It's the Texas Tech guy.
Yeah, I can't think of his name, which is bad. Mikal Bridges trade. I'm just looking it up right now. Zaire Smith. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So obviously watching Phoenix play, that obviously stings that we don't have Bridges as another wing option for the Sixers, but that just sort of goes to show the instability that we've been through. And I think it's the best thing that the article that's come out about Dallas could be, while it seems everything potentially all doom and gloom, but it might really be a positive and it forced the change that potentially might not have occurred otherwise.
I think it takes the pressure off kind of what was mounting on Porzingis and his lack of performance in this playoffs in particular. And when you look at the series of moves that the Mavericks have made, I guess the free agency spending that we've done over the last, kind of 10 years post the championship, and a lot of them haven't hit. A lot of the guys that we've tried to bring in haven't actually worked out that well. We max out a guy like Chandler Parsons back when he was a hot player in the NBA, and Wesley Matthews, we ended up giving him a big deal, and then he tears his Achilles. And we've also kind of gone big on a guy like Harrison Barnes, and actually traded him when he would be an excellent player to have right now. Harrison Barnes, I feel like he'd be an absolutely perfect fit with our starting lineup, and he's a coveted player now with his current contract. But we've had some losses in terms of guys that we've tried to hit on in free agency, and some we've always tried to get some big fish as well, and we just haven't been able to land some. We had Dwight Howard potentially in the works way back before he went to Houston, and
DeAndre Jordan.
We got DeAndre, and then he backflipped on us. So that was right in the prime of his career, but I think as a front office, interested to see what kind of terms we can make. I think it's definitely a place that you want to be if you're an aspiring GM or a coach who thinks you can really, get the most out of some superstar players, because along with a couple other teams that have coaching vacancies, I think the Mavericks is probably the hottest out there.
Yeah, definitely. Alongside of, Boston and Portland, there are a few attractive jobs out there, that's for sure.
Indiana,
Yeah, there was also some things potentially brought to light as well about Luka not being happy with the makeup of the team, and not many people would know this probably outside of you, Das, but obviously with the guy you had, the big man, Salah Mejri, he and Luca played together in Europe, and in Luca's first season, Mejri was on the Mavericks, and that was big for Luca, and
Carlisle
had a really good
hated
connection
him.
with him, and Carla hated Mejri. And so there's a lot of people that talk about the potential, Luca not really respecting Carlisle and there not being the best relationship between those two. And then I suppose the cherry on top as well was Luca was really close with JJ Barea, and then Barea left. And not to say that that's a direct fault of Carlisle or anyone else, but it just kind of adds, further, I guess, punishment to potentially how Luca's feeling with the roster makeup around him. And there was definitely, like any sort of star player, they're going to have frustrations. And there was a lot of footage throughout the season of Luca getting pissed at Carlisle when Carlisle wanted to call a timeout, and Luca was like, "No, let's play, let's keep going." And always, there was always potentially push and pull in their relationship in particular. So, not to say that that's the main reason as to why Carlisle left, but it could have been a contributing factor. And as you say, it's definitely key now for your next guy who takes over, that they can not only get the best out of Luca, but there's a budding respect between the two. And that's when I think you'll sort of see the Mavericks, and Luca always be at their best and be in a position where they can really push to, compete yearly and be stable in the top four.
Yeah, you're right. That's definitely the key. They want to be winning in the business of winning championships, and chemistry is something that you've got to develop. And clearly, there's some chemistry between the coaching staff and the team that we had this year, but we feel like we can get better. And I think it's clear that there was some kind of gap between Carlisle and Doncic, whether it's just how much older he is, and what kind of a different time in the world and society that they're from. But yeah, I think it's a good time to make a change, and I liken it kind of similarly to what went on with the Clippers. They had a great coach in Doc Rivers, and then decided that from Paul George and Kawhi's perspective, they felt they had a better relationship and could speak more freely and work better with Ty Lue. So it'd be interesting to see who the Mavericks pick up for sure.
Do you have a guy in mind, like Jason Kidd? No. I know people have thrown that out, obviously being a player there and whatnot, but it definitely have to be someone that Luca respects. And is it one of those guys that, like a Jason Kidd or a Billups, who was a successful point guard in the league, and all of that sort of stuff? I'm not sure what Luca would potentially want. Do you have a guy in mind or no?
I don't have something that someone that I'm thinking is probably the most likely candidate at the moment, but I like both of those two guys. Jake is one of my favorite players ever. He's an amazing point guard, a great leader, and I thought he did a really good job in Brooklyn and in Milwaukee when he was there. So he'd be an interesting candidate. Billups would be an interesting candidate too. He doesn't really have the coaching experience, but I don't think that necessarily matters if you can, if you know the game really well and you're committed to the work and you can really form that relationship with the best players on the team. That's just as important as anything. So I feel like the candidates probably, we need to get rolling on those, but I feel like they will come out, over a period of time. And I think it's probably more important that we lock in our GM and who's running our basketball operations first before we fire that head coach, because we wouldn't want those two to not be aligned.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of options. Even a guy like Mike D'Antoni is out there. So, and who's to say, Doc Rivers comes back as the Philly coach? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks. As much as I'd think that Darryl would probably keep Doc, who knows? He's, like we spoke about at the top, he's a pretty ruthless guy, and the number one priority is winning. And if he thinks that the coach is not going to help that and be in the team's best interest, then maybe he pulls the trigger on getting rid of Doc after one season.
You know who the Mavs' latest hire is? A big-time consultant we're bringing in, the GOAT. Nowitzki's coming back to consult with our search for a coach and GM. So love to see him on the sideline with the Mavericks. That would be absolutely all time.
Wouldn't that be crazy if he was the coach? Certainly a guy Luca respects. Jesus Christ.
I can see it more like a Tim Duncan with the Spurs kind of role. I think.
Yeah.
Assistant coach.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay, so that probably takes care of things with the Dallas side. And then also something that's gone down in the last week, which it kind of gets buried given the timing, and it doesn't normally happen this early, is the big trade. So the Celtics moved Kemba and the 16th pick in this year's draft for Horford, Moses Brown, and a future second rounder to OKC. How do you feel about that, Dust?
Yeah, it's an interesting trade, isn't it? The timing is bizarre. And well, I think this might show something about Brad Stevens as a GM rather than a coach. That he's not going to wait around. You know, he's going to make moves. He's the type of coach that didn't, never left a stone unturned and really made sure that he did all of his research into doing as much as he could as a coach. And clearly he's doing that as a GM, because it was obvious that that even though everyone liked the idea of getting Kemba on the team, the injury trouble that he's had, the lack of availability for him on the court, and it's just obvious that between Kemba, Brown, and Tatum, if they're all on max contracts, that big three is not going to be good enough to win the Eastern Conference. So they immediately move off of that contract, which is a good move, because we spoke about it up at the trade deadline. What could you get for Kemba? What team would actually be interested in Kemba? And it's Sam Presti, and the guy who has a gold mine of first round picks just picked up another one, and he's got Kemba Walker on his team. And it's the whole thing with OKC right now, and the kind of the state that they're in is, it's unclear if they want to keep any of the players they've got on their team. Would they want to keep Kemba on that team to to potentially turn them into a contender one day? Probably not. But in the short term, he's a really good locker room guy, and an excellent leader and a good basketball player. So, you would like to see him, basically, you're subbing him into the Al Horford role that he did this year, which was come and compete and play, teach the other guys how to play properly and to be a professional, and to just go out there and make sure the morale is high on this team, even though they're almost definitely going to have another big losing season next year. But, he's put an asset onto the books for OKC, and he's sending back a guy who really wants to play, and a guy who loves Boston and loves this group of guys, which is Al Horford. And what do you think about Al Horford slotting onto this Celtics roster for next season?
I think it was really good for the Thunder. A little bit disappointed in the fact that potentially that means a little bit less Time Lord. I know you are obviously very high on Robert Williams and have a lot of stock.
Seems like he's not ready to be a starter anyway, by the looks of it.
Yeah, maybe there's a bit of timeshare anyway between those two. We know Robert Williams potentially can't handle the load as a full-time starter, and his body isn't going to hold up. And maybe the same with Al Horford. The fact that Al is at the age he is, that the two sharing minutes might work. I wonder how it works with Tristan Thompson. Probably likely then going to be an expiring contract this year, and he'll be off the books. I can't really see there being a need to bring him back. But it all sort of rests on Tatum and Brown anyway. It's a pretty good duo in the perimeter and the wing spots. So if Brown can continue to excel, I know he's obviously awesome this year, and if he continued his play throughout the whole season, it was probably pretty likely he would have been an all-star, but that wasn't to be. So, I mean, they're still in an okay position. I wonder if they'll do anything with the Marcus Smart contract, given it's pretty tradable, because now they don't really have that point guard type player, because that was Kemba. I'm not sure they really have anyone waiting in the benches. I'm not sure they're very high on Carson Edwards or, Tremont Waters or anyone like
Pritchard, baby. Pritchard started.
Maybe they just start Pritchard. That's a great point. Didn't think about him. So look, I don't know, probably a bit annoying you had to give up the 16th pick in this year's draft. You had to give a first.
Potentially a good player there. 16th
exactly. Pick. And I think for the OKC side of things, would it even surprise you if, by January or Feb that of the next season, they were able to move on Kemba and get back another first. So it wouldn't. I think, as you say, OKC are in the business of having good people around the locker room for what is a very young team and what will continue to be a young team as they add more talent. And that probably starts with the draft lottery in 2 days' time, which is on Wednesday. So they could potentially have another top. Is it two top 5 picks? I think they could potentially have 2 top 5 picks. So we'll know more about that after Wednesday. But yeah, I think they're just in the business of getting good locker room guys and sort of figuring out the rest later. But
I agree.
He's done it again, hasn't he, with his first rounders? How many does he have now? 20?
20, yeah, something outrageous. They did decimate their front court though with this trade. Like they were already pretty thin. Moses Brown was starting playing all their center minutes, so they'll almost definitely be looking to pick up a forward or center in the draft for sure.
You can't start Roby, can you?
Well,
you can't start Isaiah Roby. He's not too big. He's not big enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting. Their team, their actual roster right now is just a bit of a shambles. But now they're pretty crowded in the backcourt. I don't really know if you can go Kemba and Shea Gilgeous and Lou Dort in the starting lineup. Maybe you can, but that seems pretty small. But yeah, anyway, you just don't know what to make of their actual roster. It's more just about, are they set up for the future? They've got one, seems like a superstar player in Shea, and they're hopefully gonna pick one up in this draft or the next one or the one after that.
Yeah. Okay, well, that takes care of things with the off-season, off-court news. I'm not sure if there's anything I've missed out on. Was the only thing other some more head coaching vacancies? Oh, well, I guess the main thing is, we can speak about it with the series as well coming up, but the only other thing was probably injury concern and people dropping out. So it wasn't only Kawhi, but obviously Chris Paul entering into health and safety protocols. But I actually expect him to be back for game 2 because he's already vaccinated. So he's been vaccinated since February. So he's time, the league rules of if you tested positive during the season was 10 days, I think you had to miss. And I'm not too sure about what it is when you're vaccinated, but it's certainly at least half the time. I think it might only be 5 or 6 days. So I'd expect to see him back soon.
He's the head of the Players Association. Surely he can find a way to get back out on the court. If you do use that power at one time, surely it's right now that you can find a way to get through, work something out with the league and get yourself on the court. It'll be interesting to see whether him or Kawhi Leonard, which guy comes back first, because, it's always a mystery whatever's going on with Kawhi, especially with his injuries, because it feels like he's always playing through something. But, whichever one of those guys can come back sooner, I think that'll give their team a huge, huge advantage in this series.
If we're just looking at it, so we expect CP to obviously come back before Kawhi, but I know game 1's already kicked off and that happened this morning in that series, the Western Conference Finals. But who do you think, can survive better without their star player? Is it Phoenix or is it the Clippers?
That's a good question. I ultimately think that, Booker could be the best player in that series, over Paul George. I think that, that could be the difference. But in terms of the role players, I think I probably trust the depth of the Clippers a little bit more experience, as good as a guy like Jay Crowder is, and as good as the rest of the Phoenix crew have been in this playoffs, you really are not sure what you're going to get from a DeAndre Ayton and from Mikal Bridges. And if Booker's not having a game and CP3 is not out there, there's still those question marks that have kind of remained from them from the beginning. And I think no doubt it'll be extremely tight. And you can imagine us getting to a game 6 or game 7, and then, it being incredibly difficult to score, and you just need those superstar guys to bring it home for you.
Do you have I know game 1, as you said, it's already kicked off. Phoenix already up 1-0, but do you have a prediction for which way you think that one will go?
Yeah, I think the Clippers will win. I think the Clippers will win in 6 games probably. I think it was just such a humongous emotional win for them in the last series, and I think that that'll be enough. When you go through the wars of the first 2 rounds and make it through all the adversity, if Kawhi comes back, I think then they're probably, favourites to win this. I think 6 games is enough for them to do it. I wouldn't be surprised if we go 7 and Phoenix pull it out though. But yeah, I'll go Clippers in 6. What are you thinking?
I agree with you. I hope that's not bad for our pick, the fact that we're both on the same side. But yeah, look, I know it was convincing how Phoenix were able to get through sort of both series they've been a part of, but reality is, Davis was injured, no Jamal Murray for Denver. They were banged up. So, Barton only came back for the last sort of 2 games. So I think Phoenix would find themselves definitely lucky that, similar to Milwaukee, that they caught their opponent, that suffered a lot of injuries. So wouldn't surprise me if Phoenix get through. Not saying they're a bad team, but I really love the Clippers as underdogs. It seems as though everyone's on Phoenix. I've said this to you a lot. I hate the Clippers when they're favorites. That's when I think they struggle. Yeah. When their back's against the wall, that's when they seem to really do their best work. And I'm pretty sure everyone's on Phoenix to come out of the West. So I'm going to take the Clippers, but I'm going to say 7. I'm going to say they find a way to. And I don't think Kawhi comes back. I think he's done. Given what we know about him and how he sort of dealt with his quad, as crazy as he is in terms of how good he is on the court, I think it's pretty clear that he's very robot-like in terms of when something's wrong, something's wrong. Like I guess he would probably play hurt like a lot of other players, but it feels like, as soon as something's off, he just immediately goes, I can't be at my best, so I'm not going to be out there.
He's already won 2 championships, and he has to decide what he's going to do with his next contract at the end of the season. So that's probably playing into his decision to play or not as well.
Yeah, fair. So you got Clippers 6. I'm going to say Clippers in 7. I'm going to say they find a way to get it done on the road and make it through to the finals. So then the other series. So obviously we now know it's Atlanta that are through to match up against the Bucks. That kicks off. Well, there are no games tomorrow, Das, which is been a long time since there's been a day without NBA games. So that series doesn't kick off until Thursday. So who do you like in that Eastern Conference Finals?
Gotta like the Bucks. I think, it's.
Do you give the Hawks any chance?
Not to win the series. No.
Okay.
I didn't really give the Hawks a chance to win against Philly, and that's fallen on me because they did enough and deserved to win that one. So, I think the Bucks with home court advantage as well. I think Trae Young is he was awesome in that series against Philly, but now we're going up against Drew Holiday, who's going to make it his job to lock him down. And I just think that who on earth is going to stop Giannis? Like, are they going to be able to get away with Gallinari like they did in the series against Philly? I don't think so. And Collins would have to do something awesome. It's one thing to be double teaming with Capella against Embiid, and there's another thing to be trying to stop Giannis until to convert the MVP. And I just think it'll be too much. I think there's a chance you might have a sweep here. I think I'll probably go with the sweep.
Wow. I'll give Atlanta 1 game. I think they could potentially have a hot shooting night at home and, get threes out of Herter, Gallinari, Trae. It's surprising
that was a bit quiet at the end of that series.
Something's up with his knee. I think he sprained it or injured it in game 6 there. So clearly hampered today. But he hasn't shot the ball well since really game 3 of the series against us. He's had some pretty inefficient scoring nights. So it's tough to see.
It cooled down after about 3 months of just being scorching like that end of the regular season.
Unbelievable. So look, you never know. Herter could continue this could give him a lot of confidence. He's sort of similar to Terrence Mann in that game 6 for the Clippers, just the unsung hero. No one sort of was able to see, Herter come out and drop. What did he have? 26 points or 28 points. So it's unbelievable. And that can give guys sometimes the confidence they need to think, you know what, I belong. I deserve to be in this spot. And
we both really like DeAndre Hunter, but I think Herter showed right now that he's a more complete player, especially with his offensive skill set. Like he just makes smart plays. He's a good shooter, can get his own shot in the mid range. He's got kind of sneaky height and athleticism. So I really like Herder's game, and I think he's really solidified himself with his performance as a key rotation, key starting player potentially for Atlanta going forward. I think Milwaukee might be able to get more out of their bench guys in this series. You know, it's not like you're not getting isolated against Harden and Durant if you're a bench guy like Forbes or Bobby Portis. I think those two guys have been good during the regular season. They're coming off the bench and scoring, and I think they're going to have a pretty good chance of doing that against this Atlanta team.
Yeah. So just to go over that, Das has Milwaukee in a sweep. I've got Milwaukee in 5. And then for the Western Conference, Das has Clippers in 6, and I'll take Clippers in 7. So sorry to be boring out there to the listeners that Das and I have agreed on this pick, but, it's just what we think. So, look, that takes care of things. But the last sort of thing is obviously the draft lottery on Wednesday. So really important sort of event there for a couple of teams, and we've spoken about them throughout the season. Houston might lose their pick to OKC, and OKC could have 2 top 5 picks. Then you also have Minnesota that could potentially lose their pick to Golden State
Warriors.
if that falls out, which again is insane to think. And then I think the final one is Orlando could lose their pick. Is it Chicago could lose their pick to Orlando?
To Orlando, yeah.
So that could suddenly work out great for the Magic, and the Magic could have 2 top 10 picks, which is really important for their sort of development and growth and rebuild in particular. So those I think are the 3 main storylines heading into the draft lottery. So make sure to keep an eye out for that, because I think it obviously has a lot of ramifications for a lot of different franchises, unlike the normal year.
For sure. There'll be, from everything I've been reading, leading up to this draft, there's at least 5 or 6 really potential superstar players in this draft. Yeah. Within a year or 2 could really change the hopes of your team. So, probably closest anyone's been watching the ping pong balls in a couple of years. They can really swing the fade, and it will throw the axe down on some of these trades that have been made. They could turn out to bite them really hard if they lose their top pick here.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we will leave things there. We will be back probably maybe later towards the end of the week, once a few of these series have gotten into the game 3, game 4 type range, and hopefully Chris Paul's back for Phoenix, and you never know with Kawhi. Hopefully he's back for the Clippers, and then we can get a bit of a read on this Eastern Conference Finals matchup, and even potentially get a better idea of who we'll see in the finals. But I think for all 4 of these teams, they've never the 4 remaining teams have never won a championship, or they've never been in the finals. I can't think of.
I think Atlanta and Milwaukee have won championships.
Oh, have they?
The ABA.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, potentially the very first years of the NBA. But yeah, we're definitely not talking about perennial powerhouses. We're not talking about, probably the closest out of these 4 teams is Phoenix, I suppose, back when they had Steve Nash and they were genuine contenders. That's the last time that either, any of these 4 were considered a threat to win the championship. So we're going to have some new blood, tasting victory in the championship of the NBA this year. It's exciting for some fans of these kind of closet teams. Yeah,
definitely. Okay, well, that probably takes care of things, as I said, and that wraps it up. And any sort of breaking news that'll drop, we'll certainly come to expect that, news will drop out of the blue now. We certainly haven't ruled it out with obviously the Dallas bombshell and the Celtics trade, and, teams letting go of their coaches seems to be every other day. So who knows about the fallout from a couple of these series, and, definitely my Sixers in particular. So if any of the news drops that, will require a pod, Darcy and I will be back to give our thoughts and perspectives on it, as always. But enjoy these conference finals. It's, it's getting down to the real crunch time. I know we obviously say it all often, but there's only, a month, 3 weeks left of the season. So, enjoy this NBA while you can get it, because we'll be dying out for it in September and stuff when there's no Olympics and no ball, and we'll basically take anything we can get. So hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope you enjoy watching these conference finals, and Darcy and I will be back to speak some more very shortly.
Yes, sir. Speak to you guys soon.
See you guys.